Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand. I feel like this is a homecoming for me, being back here in our old turf. It's really great to see a lot of friends who came out tonight, and as well as new faces. And we want to thank everybody for their support to come and see the premiere, finally, of our film in a place where it can be shown. We're delighted that it's here in Bangkok. We're going to watch the film. It's short. It's the first short that our team has ever made, actually. And the group that we were taking photos with is the team. And I just wanted to acknowledge them and thank them, because the people that make a film are not the people who you see standing in front of you. It's a team. And it's a team that works tirelessly and often with a tremendous amount of compassion and guts and not a lot of money, if at all. And I wanted to acknowledge my wonderful cameraman, the director of photography, Saijia Kai, who's here with us tonight. Saijia Kai, where are you? Saijia Kai, I wanted to thank you. And my other cameraman, the brilliant Julian Haddon, and both of these guys have made the last several films that we've put together. It's a wonderful team, and it's an honor to work with them. And I also wanted to acknowledge the thanks of a lot of friends who helped me through these last few years in the struggle to make this film. People like Sally Thompson, people like Virginia Henderson, who are here tonight, who offer their support in various ways, as well as actually my yoga teachers who are here with us tonight, because part of what keeps me sane to keep this work going is my practice. So I wanted to acknowledge the Iyengar Yoga Studio and all of the gifts that they've given me for yoga. So we're going to watch the film, and we're going to go straight to the panel. And we've got an excellent panel tonight, and given the news of today that just occurred in Sittwe, it should be quite an interesting discussion. There are also a team of anonymous translators who are with us tonight, who, for their own reasons of security, chose to remain anonymous. Both they don't have film credits, nor do they want to be announced in public, but they are with us tonight. And translation in a film is an essential part of putting the story together, and I wanted to thank each and every one of them for all of the volunteer hours that they gave in translating these stories that we hope to share with you tonight. So thank you all for coming, and enjoy the film, and we'll look forward to a good discussion. The producer of the film is Saya Umyowin. He is the founder and director of Smile Education and Development Foundation in Yangon. Yowin's organization has been working for a decade, specializing in interfaith peace, especially among youth. He's involved in many aspects of civil society in Myanmar right now, working with various organizations as well as with the government. He's just come back from Naypyidaw, where he did a presentation with parliamentarians on democracy and governance. He has studied abroad in the UK, and he is an executive member of the Myanmar Civil Society Forum for Peace. So he's really in the vanguard of trying to build a peaceful society in Burma. And we're also really fortunate to have with us Phil Robertson, who's a regular panelist at the FCCT. Phil, are you here? Yeah. The Deputy Director for Human Rights Watch Asia. He's an old Asia hand who's been here for several decades. Prior to Human Rights Watch, he was working very closely with migrants here on labor rights and migrant rights. He's somebody who has a wealth of knowledge. And I have just received a message from Wei Wei Nu that her Skype is not working, and she asked if you can use WhatsApp. Is she? Oh, she's here. Oh. Wei Wei Nu, you are here. Very great to have you. 5:30 in the morning. Wei Wei Nu is one of the foremost Muslim women activists. She's Rohingya. She comes from an entire family of activists. She was imprisoned for 7 years with her entire family. Her father was a member of the National League for Democracy, Aung San Suu Kyi's party. And literally her entire family was in prison with her. Her father, her mother, her brother, her cousin, herself. When she was released in 2012 at a very young age, she immediately hit the ground running to become one of the voices of of justice, social justice, and peace building in her country, and was featured in Time magazine as one of the top 20 leaders in Southeast Asia at the age, I think, of 25, was it? She has an organization that she runs, which is the Arakan Network for Women in Peace, and she is frequently going to Geneva to give testimony at the Human Rights Council on the issue of the Rohingya. And she's calling from California because she's been awarded a fellowship at UC Berkeley at the graduate school, the Bolt School of Law, where she's studying international human rights law. So we appreciate Wei Wei Nu being with us tonight as well. Thank you so much. So I think we'll just start off maybe with Myo Win. Do you want to start?
Yes. Thank you very much. You see, the flames definitely reflect what the situation of children of conflict affected area, how they are hungry of their educations, how they are, living standard, the same like, how they wanted to learn about their future career. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I can say like that, because the situation started on 2012 until now. They have no way to get better. So they have no chance to study furthermore, and also the future. I can say that how the community for the future, no hope. That's the situation. We'd like to give this flame more like in reconciliation perspective. Also, you can see, and you may be some aware different perception of different community, particular for the young ages. Those Rakhine young guy thought that the Muslim burned down their home and their mosque, with their own hand. The same like, Muslim ladies, the youngest, she also expressed who are the root cause of this conflict and this, violence, particular for this racist people as well as the government. So means they have a dimension, that means you may aware that area, how hegemony discourse for the perception of this conflict and the victims. That is one of the, important. Their awareness is very terrible. That may be, the future also may be terrible. But even those, the ladies and the young guy and the monk, they wanted to be a better community, live together. But that kind of voice are very few of there. I know the genie is the best, she may know more than us, because how difficult they make it for this flame at the ground. A lot of restriction. They're not allowed to go to that camp. The parents not allowed to speak, particularly for the Rakhine ladies, to her daughter in front of the camera. So means the school they engage definitely not allowed to speak, officially they're not allowed to speak that young girls to speak out about their, idea, their feelings. So it means the situation. So you can see Connect for yesterday, violation, and the same, today, what happened in there. So I just very short today. Thank you very much.
Okay, Phil.
Okay. I think my role on this panel is to sort of provide a broad sweep of what's been going on a little bit. Some of you may know some of these key issues and things like that, but I wanted to provide a little bit of perspective, not only on the situation in Rakhine State and around Sittwe, but also I think the larger situation in Burma. You saw a lot of these people in the film who are in those displaced persons camps. And those displaced person camps just outside of Sittwe, you know, going all the way from Sittwe out to the west, currently have about 120,000 people in them. And those people have been effectively displaced since 2012. You saw some of the burning at the beginning of the film, you know, that was burning from 2012. And you can go to these camps. You can't get to the areas in the northern Rakhine state where there was the violence last year, which I'll talk about in a bit. I was there in February with a number of people from Human Rights Watch and sitting with the camp committees, meeting with the local women and the men's groups. You got a profound sense of loss, you know, that they knew that just, you know, 4 or 5 kilometers away their homes were there. They spoke about the fact that their homes had not been turned over to the Rakhine, but were being held by the government, so that, you know, they still had an idea or hope that somehow they would be able to return. But there was also matched with that a profound fear of going to Sittwe, going to that city without some sort of protection. And what we saw just overnight was attacks against a group of Rohingya. We don't know all the details. We believe that one has died, several were grievously injured. And it appears to be connected to Rohingya coming in to serve as witnesses at a criminal case at the court and being attacked by a mob. The police escort, 1 or 2 guys, ran away and left them to their fate. And you know, this is going to again reverberate through these camps in a very profound way. You know, this mixture of longing, loss, and fear. You know, as you go around in downtown Sittwe, you see these old mosques, abandoned, essentially partly burned out. You look at the one area left in Sittwe that is still a Muslim neighborhood, Aung Mingala, when right after the beginning of the 2012 violence, approximately 8,000 people were living there and run in there. Now that figure is down to just about 2,700, 2,800. It's dwindling because these people are essentially pinned in. They have no livelihoods. And people described it as the lobster trap. People understand how a lobster trap works. The lobster goes into the trap and then can't find its way back out. It's the same way with the Rohingya. You're able to leave Aung Mingala and go to the camps in the west, but you're not allowed to come back. Similarly, if you Rohingya in these camps and you want to go to northern Rakhine State, you can possibly do that. You can go up to Maungdaw and other places, but you cannot come back. And that's the idea, sort of trying to drive people, move people out and again towards the border. The school you saw, the health clinics we visited, everything is being held together by humanitarian assistance and NGO support. You know, some of that is from the UN, but much of it is from the NGOs. When you talk about what the government is putting into these camps, pretty much nothing. You know, basically guards who spend as much time extorting the local population as they do protecting anybody. When we look at what happened in 2012, Human Rights Watch at that time put out 2 reports. One was called "The Government Could Have Stopped This," looking at the violence in June 2012. And then the second report, "All You Can Do Is Pray," which was looking at what happened in October 2012. Both of those reports are on our website. You can download them for free at hrw.org. But what we found in both of those cases was crimes against humanity and ethnic cleansing had been committed, and no one was held accountable. And that's still the case today. You know, moving forward to what happened last year, obviously there was the attack by this previously unknown Rohingya militant group. And then, you know, humanitarians and others were kicked out of this clearance operation area by the security forces. And then everything went dark. What's going on there? We started getting tips from journalists in Burma that, in fact, it looked like some of these areas might be having fires, and there might be situations going on. And people had remembered our work in 2012 working with satellite imagery. And so we were able to use satellite imagery and actually got lucky in the rainy season to get some good imagery about what was taking place. And the interesting thing was we saw denial right from the start, not only by the Burmese military, the Tatmadaw, and the police, which we expected, but also from the NLD-led government and Aung San Suu Kyi's team. You know, within several weeks of bringing out this material, like in mid-October, there was already a press conference coming out saying that Human Rights Watch had, you know, basically lied about how many villages had been burned. We had basically said that this is incorrect. You know, we have a professional satellite imagery technician working on these issues, and the government was saying that, well, you know, we were able to fly over these areas and count the burning houses by helicopter, and our count is more correct. The interesting thing was they included a village in that press conference trying to rebut our claims that we hadn't discussed at all. And we did more imagery. We realized that actually that village had started burning the day before the press conference. And so they had actually given us a tip about actually where to look next. You know, the amazing thing also, you have this press team that's been created by Aung San Suu Kyi to talk about these issues. And, you know, Muza, who is the former chief of staff of Thein Sein's presidency in his office, you know, this is a person who visited Human Rights Watch several years ago, spewed all sorts of racist rhetoric in talking to us about the Rohingya. You know, why is this person still employed by an ostensibly democratic rights-respecting government? It's very, very hard to see any sort of change, and we're not seeing any sort of change in terms of impunity. We have not seen much coming out of the 2016, you know, incidents in terms of real investigations and accountability, not much from the 2012 investigations, and even going back before that. People don't really recognize that there are still over 30,000 refugees from the ethnic cleansing that took place back in 1992 and 1993 against the Rohingya. They're still in Bangladesh. So when Bangladesh and Burma start talking about sending some people back, they're talking about that group of recognized refugees who have been in a refugee camp really since 1993 and 1994. Bangladesh doesn't want these people either. And that's also something you don't see in this film because they were able to get into Sittwe, but if you were looking at what is taking place in Bangladesh, you would find, again, these sort of people being pinned into these areas, lacking livelihoods, lacking necessary basic services and support. You know, Bangladesh has now been talking about a plan to send the Rohingya in Cox's Bazar area to an island that basically floods during the rainy season, has no way to grow food, has no potable water, and is infested with pirates. And, you know, Dhaka has actually been trying to raise money from the OIC, the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. And you know, in talking with people in Bangladesh, Rohingya, they said the one way that the boats would restart again is if actually Bangladesh tries to implement this plan. The Prime Minister of Bangladesh seems serious about it. We'll see if it actually comes about. Militarily, we have not seen any sort of significant change whatsoever in the way the military, the Tatmadaw, actually operates. In the field, in terms of the clearance operations, basically you had troops going into these areas, people running away, being shot at because they're assumed to be insurgents, men and women being caught, separated, men being tortured, beaten, treated as if they're insurgents, women being strip searched, believed that they're holding valuables, some of them being raped, houses being plundered, and then everything being burned. You know, and actually, if you look what happened in Rakhine State, in northern Rakhine State last year, and you took a Kachin there, you took a Karen there, you took a Karenni there, they'd say, wow, these things look very familiar to us, because that's the way the Tatmadaw operates across the country. It's basically a scorched earth army. It's very good at abusing civilians, and it is very good at denying everything once it has done so. The other thing that we haven't seen is we haven't seen any change in terms of, you know, the way they operate politically. You know, they deny everything, you know, and they set up false investigation committees that don't get to the truth, but seem to sort of obstruct real investigations. And, you know, finally, this past March, the international community had enough, and they set up a what is called a fact-finding mission. The idea was not to call it a commission of inquiry, but something that would sound more neutral. In this sense, you have a decision by the international community essentially reversing a trend where they were moving towards greater acceptance of Burma, greater acceptance of the idea that human rights abuses were being reduced, and moving back into a phase where the UN is going to take a much more active role in dealing with Burma. And interestingly also, we're back to the same sort of pre-Aung San Suu Kyi election model where Burma is now defying the UN by saying that they're not going to allow the 3 investigators from the fact-finding mission into the country, and also causing other problems. You know, there's supposed to be regular human rights monitors going from Bangkok into Burma. They've had problems with their visas. The head of the UN country team has just been removed for not raising human rights issues. The Rights Up Front mechanism from Ban Ki-moon was supposed to be implemented in Burma as a pilot project. It's gone nowhere. You know, now they're trying to revamp the whole thing. So the UN, again, is failing to do what it needs to do to deal with human rights issues in Burma. And a worrisome thing, as we saw with how this film was treated in Rangoon. This film was supposed to be debuted at a film festival on human rights and human dignity in Yangon. And surprise, surprise, it was basically rejected. It was not allowed to be shown. What we have seen is a continued practice of trying to block the showing of films that deal with either the Rohingya or the embattled Burmese Muslim minorities in other parts of the country. So a year before, we had a film on Mektila. The violence took place in 2013, which was censored. And now we're having greater control of media censorship. So we're sort of almost going back in time. You know, we have 3 journalists who have been arrested in northern Burma. Their idea, they went to go observe a drug burning by an ethnic group, which happens to be in conflict with the government. So they have been arrested under the 1908 Unlawful Associations Act. You know, the Telecommunications Act is being used by the military to prosecute people for making fun on Facebook of the military commander of the army. So we've had over 68 prosecutions since Aung San Suu Kyi took power. And when we get into the issues of ethnic issues and peace, again, we're seeing the military playing a central role in Aung San Suu Kyi, essentially adopting a military position that no real negotiations can go on without groups that haven't signed a ceasefire. So where are we now? I mean, what it's looking like is that what we suspected is becoming more and more clear, that Aung San Suu Kyi is not a human rights activist, but in fact, it's worse than that. She's not even a good politician. You know, maybe the lesson learned is don't elect a failed academic and a librarian as a political leader. You know, what we have is someone who has been involved in Burma-style hierarchical approach, concentrate powers and decisions. She's increasingly poorly informed. She could have had the best and brightest team from both inside and outside of Burma, but she's got something far less than that now. And despite the best efforts of diplomats and others to assist her, to support her, the military is essentially running circles around her politically. I saw this very clearly in visits in Karen State and Rakhine State, where you have these chief ministers who are NLD elected members. These are the supposedly all-powerful governors of these states, and the local military and the general administration department is really running rings around them. So the situation for the Rohingya is bleak, but I would say that the situation on human rights issues in Burma is similarly bleak. I think that the Rohingya represent the sort of the worst case of the bad situation that is growing there. It's a long way from where we thought it was going to be, and I think ultimately now we're going to have a concerted push by the international community and others to engage with not only the Burmese government, but also with the ethnic groups, and try to press very hard for a recognition that Burma has to be a multi-ethnic, diverse, multi-religious country that respects all and treats everybody equally if it's going to succeed. Thanks.
We've almost got what we knew.
Jeannie, can I ask you a question?
Of course. It's not an FCCD event if it's not.
And first of all, congratulations on the documentary. I know a great amount of love and time and emotion has gone into it. Phil referred there to the issue of trying to, or supposedly having this screened, or trying to have this screened in Yangon. Could you just maybe elaborate on what the plans were and why they didn't come to fruition?
Yeah, the film was accepted for its premiere at the Human Rights, Human Dignity International Film Festival, which is directed by the esteemed filmmaker Minting Kokoji. And we were all set to go, and I booked my ticket to Rangoon, and just less than a week before the festival, we were told it was okay, that it was not allowed in the official document that was given to the film festival, that it was that they had the censorship board had deemed that it was culturally and religiously inappropriate for Myanmar audiences. That's the official language, that was the edict on why it was banned. And that we were furthermore banned from any showing whatsoever, not just in the film festival, but it's not allowed to be publicly screened at all in Myanmar.
And who is that board? Who are those people?
The Myanmar Censorship Board is comprised of, I think, 6 different organizations, including the Myanmar Film Association, sorry?
Minister of Information, representative.
Minister of Information. And for the first time this year, according to Minting Kokoji, they had a representative from the State Councilor's office for the first time ever for the film festival. So, yeah, I think it was a 6-member board. But the official letter of being banned was sent to the festival director, not to us. But it was unfortunate because I think you can see that it's not meant to be volatile. On the contrary, it's meant to try to open up a window of discussion. That was really why we made the film, was to create a space for just listening to other viewpoints and considering other views as a way to let young people especially have a voice to see what's possible to move forward out of this stasis of segregation and violence. We've got Weiwei New, I think, alas, right? Well, while we're asking her phone number, why don't we take some more questions? The mic is right there in the back.
Yes.
Hello, I have a question for Umor Win.
Yes.
At the moment, there's a lot of interest with UN agencies and international NGOs in Rakhine. Donors are putting money in. What type of project or initiative do you think is going to be or should be most effective for peace building, trust building, social cohesion, etc.? What would you advise as the best type of project to implement there?
I think according to our experience with different stakeholders, you know, the most difficult thing is the policy. People used to be focused on the policy change, but actually practically not so working. Many organizations doing for policy change with government or parliament or many stakeholders, but not so working. But I only recommend that the best suit is like advocate to the government. Education should get education project mainly for. Everybody should get education, whatever legal or illegal person. This is very controversial thing. Whatever people who live in camp or whatever who live in, you know, city, they should get education access. That is the number one. That may be effective for the future. This is a longer solution for this, whatever conflict or reconciliation, you know. That may be the, should be focused UN agency, more invest for the education, for the children. Of course, we have to be making with advocacy to the Minister of Education for their curriculum. According to the current curriculum, we are also support for peace building or reconciliation or, you know, so-called democratic. Totally against current, almost all of the education curriculum are against human rights, against peace process idea, you know. So that's another concern, you know. But that should be the UN and international NGO should focus on education.
I was thinking very much of on the grassroots, you know, in Sittwe or in Mung Dao, projects which are bringing communities together, if that is actually possible. Maybe in Mung Dao it is possible to bring communities with a mutually benefit project together, maybe. Sittwe, I probably doubt it is. But I'm thinking very much grassroots, community-to-community projects which will actually build trust and help break down the barriers. Right. Have you any advice on that specifically?
That's really a great idea. We thought that we have to be, firstly, we should build it for the capacity or separately. Because of that, you know, authority is already, you know, divided. Now 5 years already. So people has no touching point. So that's another barrier, you know. That's why people are not so close. So mistrust is bigger and bigger. So that is one concept that we should build up for separately together. The idea of the human concept, you know, the idea of social cohesion, the idea of development, that kind of concept, and then separately and trying to make a space for meeting point.
Okay.
Each other. That kind of project should be there.
So you're saying at first, start with them separately,
Right.
and then when you've got the groundwork done,
Right.
then see if there's a space and it's possible to bring them back, bring them
Sure.
together.
Sure.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
A quick one to Phil. Now Renata's gone, which is a great shame, we all miss her. What's her replacement like? Any idea?
That's a good question. Yeah, Renata is the UN resident coordinator who was essentially removed from her position prior to her full 5 years coming to a close. So she's essentially been removed for, I think, probably having the wrong approach, you know, thinking that somehow you can just throw money at a problem without recognizing that you have to have political will to also challenge rights abusers. What we're hearing, and we don't have any details beyond this very general, is that we're going to see an escalation of the level of the country leadership for the UN. The discussion is that an assistant secretary general be appointed, which is the first time we've heard that ever in the UN system. But I think it reflects the possibility that, you know, we may see New York playing a much larger role in trying to deal with problem countries like Burma, where, you know, it was presumed that things were going to get better and now things are getting worse. You know, what can the UN do to contribute to try to turn that around? If this happens, this will be an appointment and a reflection of a new policy from the new UN Secretary General Guterres, who actually has had a lot of experience in Burma. People may not realize that he was previously the head of the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, and in fact, in 2012, when he went to visit the country, President Thein Sein said basically, well, if you're concerned about these Rohingya, we'll give them to you and you can send them to some other country. To which Guterres responded, well, the UN Refugee Agency is not in the business of creating refugees, because these people, of course, are all internally displaced. And maybe you might want to reflect again about what you're doing here. So there's a lot of knowledge, I think, of Guterres and his top people about Burma. The question is, are they going to get the right person to really shake up the UN country team? Because so far, it's been mostly the Office of High Commissioner on Human Rights, home alone, trying to push against the government, and the government being able to really give them a very hard time.
But we don't know who it is yet or when they're coming in.
No, we have no information about that.
Because Mark Cutts doesn't seem to be too bad in his role. I think he was hamstrung by Renata. So I think without Renata, Mark Cutts,
yeah,
I think he might actually do a lot better.
Yeah, you're talking about, this is the guy who's the head of OCHA, the Coordinator for Humanitarian Assistance.
He might have a bit more freedom.
Well, we'll see. I mean, he certainly is one of the people who has been better on the human rights and issues, certainly in Rakhine State and other places like that. We just don't know, again, you know, what is going to be the larger political dynamic that's going to take place there when this new person is sent in.
Okay. Thank you. if we still have time, there's another couple of questions. I'm interested in a couple of things. Civil society in all the different conflict areas of Burma, do they actually coordinate? Is there networking? Are there lessons learnt? Do they have, do they work out common platforms? Because as Phil said, there's similarities in what's the suffering and what the victims are suffering there. Is there that coordination between civil societies throughout Burma, or isn't the network there yet?
I think few civil society, including us, we have started to initiate that, kind of mechanism working for those kind of issues. But still big challenge. Even among the civil society, different awareness about, particular for this violence against religious minority. Because, 50 years under the propaganda of military, so everybody, I can say 99% of how can I say, 99% of, biggest majority populations, particularly, I mean, not the minority religious people, they have already damned for hegemony discourse. These minorities, so-called like Muslims, are the biggest and dangerous and, occupying the country, something like that. Same like Christianity also trying to approach to take their land. That kind of mentality almost, people inside already because of this 50-year propaganda by the military. Practically, I noticed since 1989, consequently they make a strategically, systematically, make a, propaganda for that kind of thing. Since 1989, I noticed that. 1993, 1994, the biggest countrywide campaign against Muslim minority. So-called, the publication, so-called, the book, name of the book is called, We Are Fearing to Lose Our Race and Religion. In Burmese, we call that Okay,
it's okay.
Right, like that. Okay, wait, you should take it.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, wait.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello?
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Jenny, for your hard work. And finally, we made it. And thanks again for your extraordinary work. And the video was very heart-touching and very reflect reality. And it's really important work that you have been done. And thank you so much, Phil and Myo-Win again for your insightful presentation. And thanks for giving me a chance to speak a bit here. And I'm sorry for all technological error. As Phil and Myo-Win described, the situation in Rakhine State, it's not a new thing. It's been long-rooted conflict, or it's basically not a conflict. People describe situations as a conflict, but I would say which is a situation that has been created by the government for decades and which has to be solved by themselves. And oftentimes we are hearing that the authorities, government, and even some people from outside describe situations as communal conflict. But in my understanding, communal conflict is communal misunderstanding, mistrust, distrust, and fear. Those we can describe as conflict, which is the result and impact of the discriminatory policies and persecution policies which has been imposed by the Burmese military or government, and which is a result, an impact. So that has to be solved in other way as a side problem. but the main problem is the root causes of the persecutions and discrimination, and which has to be done by government itself and with all of our effort. And in these situations after October 2016, as you may also aware, all of you may aware that the situations become very, very severe, and it is really unprecedented situations. It has to be, right now, we cannot wait for any more time. Phil was talking about fact-finding mission. Yes, I think it is very important to have international independent body which is looking into the situations, but I think at this point we need more than that. Fact-finding mission results or report will come out next year, March, but for me it is very difficult to wait for next year March until next year 2018 March. We don't know what will happen within this period. So I think right now we have to do something else. We have to ask for the accountability. We have to address the questions of accountability and immediate actions to stop the current severe situations in the ground. This is very important. Even after the fact-finding missions, we don't know what will happen. So we cannot just rely on that. We need to address the immediate situations. We need to call for the accountability and justice for the victims in the ground. Unless we address the questions of justice and accountability, we can never build any kind of communal, how to say, the harmony or social harmony. Without peace and accountability, we cannot build any trust or rule of law or the social harmony. We've been trying, but at the end of the day, the peace and justice, accountability is very, very important. And in these days, I feel kind of very concerned because even so, in the news we heard that the State Consular Office and government has refused fact-finding missions to enter to the country. So at the same time, we are seeing more and more crackdown in the ground, and not only in northern Rakhine state, but also it's kind of spreading in many ways in other part of the state as well, including in Sittwe. Just recently, a few days ago, there was attack happened. Phil also described a bit, and I don't think this is like a sudden incident, and I doubt these kind of things is repeating again and again with purpose maybe, or with failure to take actions by the government, because of the failure to take actions by the government. And I think we shouldn't just let them happen again and again and see. And this is really, really a critical time. And I'm also seeing that not many people are paying attention to the root causes of the situations and not really covering what's going on inside the country. Mainly the documentary like Jenny did, it is very important, but I think we need more than that. We need more video, more stories, and more investigative stories from the ground. And some people say that there aren't enough media coverage inside the country in compare with the international media or international rights groups. But that's kind of true. But within these few months, I realized that even in, among the international media, there aren't enough story coming out. They are only covering the superficial news, which may be from the government of Myanmar or from the news on news fact-finding missions from UN agency. But there aren't enough stories coming out from the ground, and I think this is very important. At the same time, that stories has to be used in an effective way to really address the situations and to call for justice and accountability to the government of Myanmar. And also, when it comes to the refugee, people are really excited that by seeing the news that the news with the government of Myanmar and Bangladesh, talking about the return of the refugee. But as Phil mentioned, those kind of conversations has been ongoing for many years right now, but it really doesn't happen. And when they talk about the refugee, it's about the registered, a few registered refugee in compare with the 100,000, at least 300,000 refugees over there. So I think it is time not to just rely on what's on the news or what has been covering on the news, but it has to go more deeply, individually, with organizations or, as agencies, and really giving more effort to get to the reality and to come up the real story, which is very important. Thank you so much. I'm welcome to receive any kind of questions, any question you may have.
Thank you, Weiwei Nu. So I think we've got time for maybe just 2 more questions. If anybody has a question or a comment from the floor, if you could go up to the mic so everybody could hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Kalinga Seniratna. I'm a journalist and also communication lecturer. From what I have been listening to now, what I see is, as a Sri Lankan myself, this is a rerun of what happened in Sri Lanka, what is happening in Myanmar. Now, you mentioned about the attacks on the army, but there was a report from the International Crisis Group at the same time, and they mentioned in that report that there were some 20 Rohingya refugees who were trained by Saudi Arabia in terrorist activities. And there was a suggestion, I think, in that some of these attackers could be from that group. That was not mentioned by any of you in the film or in the presentation. And last month, there were a number of attacks on Buddhist temples and Buddhist communities in the Chittagong area in Bangladesh. Even Al Jazeera reported on it. And Bangladeshi Buddhists are saying these are Rohingyas who are involved in it. So when you look at what is happening now, there is this UN Human Rights Commission which has set up the so-called fact-finding mission. And I know Sri Lanka had very serious problems with its credibility of that report. And Myanmar is raising the same credibility issues. Of course, I'm sure they're aware of what happened in Sri Lanka. So the issue here seemed to be more a socio-economic problem. I know in Sri Lanka also it's a socio-economic problem. Here also it's a socio-economic problem. And you need, you keep on, the international media and the human rights organization and NGOs keep on talking about ethnic communities and religious communities when you need to address it as a socio-economic issue. And when you address it as a socio-economic issue, it is more likely that you can find solution for that. About 4 years ago, the UNESCO office here asked me if I would like to be a consultant on a community radio project they were going to introduce it was in Rakhine state with EU funding. And when they showed me the TOR, I read through it and I pointed out to the UNESCO office here, this is not going to work. You can't blame the Buddhists and set up a radio, community radio for the minorities. The Buddhists are going to resent it, deeply resent it. And I explained to them about what happened in Sri Lanka between 2002 and 2004. Similar things happen. So when you see people, especially from Europe, coming and advising us in Asia about reconciliation and about, you talked about war crimes and crimes against humanity. And every time there's a terrorist attack in Europe these days, I read about the reaction to it and laugh to myself and say, what a bunch of hypocrites they have been. That they have been advising the Asian countries to do something, they do exactly the opposite when they are attacked by terror groups. So you cannot address this by hypocrisy. You need to look at it as socio-economic issues.
I think your
and
point
see
is
how
well,
it can be resolved.
Your point is well stated, and if you saw in the film, in fact, the monk specifically addressed that, and that was why it was included in the film. But moreover, the purpose of why Smile wanted to produce this film was to focus on education and the access or lack thereof for both communities, which is in itself a socioeconomic issue of great importance, because without education, there aren't the critical thinking skills that people need as a tool to be able to make the discernment between rumor and fact, and having the context to actually build communities and harmony, right? So that was really the thrust of the film. But Wei Wei, did you want to respond to any of that? Could you hear that?
Yes. So I was not very clear. I think he is trying to say that we have to approach from the social as a social economic issue. Is that right?
I think so.
In short, yeah, that was a key point, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that at some point, at some part, but we have to look at the situations in a comprehensive way. Social economic problem, there might be element of social economic problem as well, but what I wanted to say is the Rakhine state is not like that from the beginning. It's not just that much poor from the beginning, which is a rich, full of natural resources and a rich state in the country, in Myanmar. It used to be very rich and culturally, traditionally, economically, and educationally. People were very civilized, highly educated, and the state was one of the richest states in Burma. Even if before it's become part of the Burma, the Rakhine state was a very commercial area, and it was very rich. So this socio-economic problem right now, the poverty is creation of this divide and rule policy, and due to this persecution and all discriminatory policies that has been imposed. That is why we're calling that the discrimination has to be resolved, the prosecution has to end, peace and accountability justice and accountability is important. And we've been hearing that from the international diplomats and investigators, business people and government, that if there is more development project and if there is more investment and development opportunity, the situations might change. But I'm very concerned and I'm worried that without able to access both development or privilege or the opportunity has to be accessible for all communities in Rakhine state. By putting 1/3 of the populations as a camp or prison-like conditions, and without having any access from them or on those development or economic opportunity, it will be, I'm even worried that it can create a more inequality economy-wide, social aspect-wide, and it will create more conflict, because once you have more inequality and more discriminations, and there will be more conflict. So, the approach, social-economic approach or development approach, without addressing the discriminatory policies and justice, I don't trust that.
Can I add something there on that? I just want to add, I mean, I think this approach of trying to get the socioeconomic approach going forward was something that the UN country team was trying to do. They said that, well, the problem is that, the Rakhine think that all the aid is going to the Rohingya and it's not going to the Rakhine, therefore we have to put in more aid on both sides. But the reality is that when you have the Rohingya essentially with such limited freedom of movement, that directly impacts on their ability to access services and select livelihoods, you can pour a lot of money into there, but you're still not going to get an equal outcome because of the restrictions that exist on the Rohingya. The restrictions that are born of the fact that they are not considered to be citizens, and therefore discriminatory provisions, ordinances, restrictions on movement, restrictions on family size, restrictions on even repairing your house can be imposed on them. I would add one other thing, that I think that there has been some lesson learned in Myanmar from Sri Lanka, and I think that these actually lessons were probably not good ones. We saw a lot of connections between Wiratu and Mavata and some of the really radical extremist Buddhist monks in Sri Lanka. There was cases where Wiratu was going there. There were solidarity conferences, spreading essentially hate speech in the form of sort of Buddhist chauvinism. And we've also seen Burma increasingly adopting an attitude that we saw in terms of the Sri Lankan government when it dealt with the UN Human Rights Council, which is forming basically biased commissions as national institutions to so-called investigate human rights abuses, and then failing to, and these investigations would go on and on and on. They would not result in anything, but the idea was to try to run out the clock in favor of a national solution that was not serious about getting to justice, getting to accountability, but was all about process, because they thought that eventually the UN would get tired of raising these issues. And ultimately, that didn't happen, and we now have a real reform situation taking place in Burma, where you have, in Sri Lanka, where you have a government which is better representing all the people of Sri Lanka rather than just one ethnic group.
I also just wanted to add to...
If I may add, Jenny, can I add one more thing? Yes,
please.
Yeah, so I think it's more than that, and we worried that the development and the investment opportunity might have linked with the conflict, or with the violence against Rohingya in 2012, or even the current situations, because we have seen that many of the land that has been emptied after the conflict of violence has been used by authorities and has been put as like government land, and taken by the authorities, and even built some governmental institutions or buildings in Sittwe. And I think this is one of the areas that we have to look into, the conflict and development, or economic development, whether it is related or linked or not. And it is very worrisome, and I'm worried that that can put the Rohingya community to more vulnerable situations. And land has been, the land is one of the last remaining rights they have remained right now as citizens of the country. They have the ownership of land is right now very important. And again, there is two questions. One thing is the land ownership and the document, the identity card they may have, or they used to have, or they are going to issue. I mean, for example, like NVC or any other identity card, and I'm worried that that might be linked with their land ownership. For example, if once the government is right now trying to provide a kind of card called National Verification Card, and they are saying that potentially you can get citizenship or any kind of identity, and there was no clear, transparent process, and we don't know what's really what is that. But when we talk about the NVC, which is not a citizenship card, which is not a national identity card, which may be issued for the foreigners. So it means that once you hold that, your land ownership might automatically, by default, you will lose your land ownership. So which is one of the last remaining rights or the ownership that they have, the majority of the Rohingya have in the country, and that is about to. This is right now very fragile, and it's about to. It's very. We have to look into that. And on the other hand, when we talk about the economic development, many experts and publications has kind of giving hint on the linkage between the economic development and conflict in Rakhine State. And that is why right now we are saying that resettlement is very important, and removing restrictions against the Rohingya community, mainly restrictions on the movement, is very, very important. Without that, we cannot, any kinds of economic development approach will be failed, create more inequality, discriminations, and more conflict.
I just wanted to add, before we go to Maung Jau, to the gentleman, that just to circle back to the film a little bit, is that the reason that Smile produced this film and the intention behind this film, and the reason why we made it a short and not a full-length feature, is to use this film as a tool for conflict resolution and reconciliation. So the intent is for Smile and its team to have facilitated discussions with youth, particularly in Rakhine State, both Buddhist and Muslims, to watch the film and respond to it, and have a facilitator who's trained in conflict resolution and guiding those kinds of discourses. And I think it's important that we also engage the Buddhists in Rakhine State, many of whom feel very marginalized from the many years of neglect, which of course makes them far more malleable and vulnerable to groups like Mabatha, and to realize that there's fear in their community as well. They're also being bullied in a way, in a social way, that if they don't go along with these Mabatha thinking, that mindset, that they would risk themselves being expelled from their communities or their jobs. So I think the window of opening in terms of youth engagement for peace is along what Smile's mandate is to bring together all people to listen to one another, even if they disagree, but to at least hear somebody else out and then discuss why you feel that way about another group, and what did you hear about that group that led you to feel that way, and just sort of try to work that through with the goal of planting small seeds of an opening in people's hearts to consider the other community as one with them. That's what Myo Win's.
Yeah. So mainly, so we are, of course, that's a conflict initiated by political, power issue, actually. The same like, linkage with cronyism and, a lot of, natural resources issues that are linkage each other. That community, definitely, they are not accessible for their livelihood. That's the number one crisis. Number two crisis is we should look at for our generation. Of course, we are struggling for politically right-based approach, but say we also look that government have to be look for their country's development for the future generation. According to the census, almost 1/3 of the Myanmar populations, they live without civil document. That's future threat of the country. So that we are advocating for the future, how we can progress for our generation, people, you know. So that is the main reason we are advocating. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close it out. Maung Jo-u, I have to ask you in advance to keep it short because I think it's past 9 now, so thank you so much. Wei Wei, can you still hear us?
Thanks, Jenny, Phil Robertson, and Myu Ming, and also Wei Nu. Thank you very much. You are there in this program. My question today is, especially Myu Ming, Mr. Myu Ming, that do you think that without changing of military route written, you know, the constitution, so-called constitution of 2008 constitution, without changing the 2008 constitution, can we get any result in Myanmar, any kinds of, you know, the peaceful life or the any rights can get from in the country, for example, the Rohingyas as well as Burmese Muslim or Kachin, Karen and other, even the student, everything is dependent due to the, you know, the bad rule of 2008 constitution. This is my question to Mr. Myu Ming. Another question to Mr. Pils and also Wei Nu and others, Jenny there. Now, you already know that, the speakers already discussed about it, that fact-finding mission is not allowed by the Aung San Suu Kyi, who is very powerful lady in Myanmar, even the Aung San Suu Kyi government now. What will be next? Even the fact-finding committee is not allowed by the elected government. This fact-finding committee is already erupted by the UN Human Rights Commission, 47 countries. In a state of, because the Ms. Yang Hili and the Mr. Zahid also would like to form to, you know, the like inquiry of commission. In a state of inquiry of commission, finally the EU pressure, they already form only the, you know, the fact-finding mission. Even the military government is not allowed the fact-finding commission. What will be next? And we have been asking for the, you know, the safe haven for the Rohingyas. It means the peacekeeping forces or the, you know, responsibility to protect R2P policy, at least to save our remaining Rohingyas since 2012. You, the speakers, you know, Honorable Ms. Jenny also know about that. We, the Rohingyas, from the ground and the overseas, asking only safety for the, you know, for the remaining Rohingyas. Okay. Even, you know, the 9 August 2016 to now, again, nearly 100,000 Rohingyas from my village, near my village, driven out by the, you know, the present government. Now, they took refuge in Bangladesh, you know that. So what will be next?
Okay, Maung Jo. So
you know, this is my question, you know.
So let's go to the questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think that issue here in Burma, the problem is, you know, particular for facing for religious minority, particular for Rohingya, they are facing the crisis. According to my opinion, I think constitution is not sources of the conflict. But of course, the part of the conflict is that constitution, of course. But even before the constitution as well, these people are already terrible. You know, their marginalization policy. That you know, only thing is, you know, so-called powerful people or authority or whatever, you know, military, you know, that they should be fulfilled 2 points. I would like to refer, one is our national anthem. That is, we want it like our land should be justice and liberty, equality, non-discrimination. In Burmese we call it is mean justice and liberty. The second, everybody has lived with peace and dignity. That's a 2 line. That they have to be fulfilled. Whatever way, constitution reform, new writing constitution, or no constitution, no problem. That if they practice like that, it's fine. My perspective. Second one is like independent declaration. our independent declaration not focus on the ethnic politics, ethnic nationalism, and so-called category or 135 or 144 or whatever, not like that, Everybody who live in Burma, they have to be eligible for the citizen. All citizens should be equal right. Whatever ethnic or non-ethnic or, this is kind of discrimination that created by the people who are keeping their power. All people are following the way, I'm not talking about for today, our perspective is definitely for the, advocacy for education, the truth and reconciliation. But if we talk about the argument, even we are following, I can say, whatever, terrorize, ethnic. As well, they are following the mainstream politics. They want to be, they are recognized ethnic. Big problem, Everybody, including our community too. Because of that created by the mainstream politics, 1982 citizenship law only favor for recognized ethnic. If you want to be a born citizen, you have to be a recognized ethnic. That's why everybody wanted to be a recognized ethnic. If not that way, according to 1948 citizenship law, according to the 1948 constitution, whatever ethnic or non-ethnic is not big problem. Citizen is equal. All citizens are equal opportunity. Whatever ethnic or non-ethnic or, citizen by birth or now, 1982 citizenship law created the big conflict, divided different class of citizenship. Recognized ethnic must be a born citizen. They're the highest grade of citizen. Somebody not recognized, just, that's very complicated. So mean that's, given shut by the New Win era. Everybody follow the New Win politics until now, including current government, because that's why they are keeping this 135. Somebody not included in 135, oh, they want to extend. So, by my particular perspective, if we want the peace in Burma, everybody who born in Burma, they should be a citizen. All citizens should be equal opportunity, equal right. All, that's a very simple way, Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, great note to end that on, Myo-in. Last words?
The question to me was about the fact-finding mission and how's it going to work and what's next. And what I would say is by refusing the fact-finding mission, by refusing to allow this Human Rights Council appointed process to go forward in Burma, the new Aung San Suu Kyi NLD government is essentially joining with countries like North Korea and Syria and others who are systematically refusing to cooperate with Human Rights Council mandates. So it's not particularly a good company to be in. That said, this is still going to proceed. The fact-finding mission will do what other fact-finding missions or commissions of inquiry have done when they've been not allowed into the country, and they will talk to whoever they need to talk to outside of the country and get information from UN agencies and others to fulfill their mandate. So I expect we'll see the fact-finding mission in Bangladesh for an extensive period of time. I expect they'll probably go to Malaysia and talk to Rohingya and other people there. They'll probably be here in Thailand and maybe some other places. So they will go to where they need to get the information. And we've seen that, for instance, in the case of the Commission of Inquiry on North Korea, which was chaired by Justice Kirby from Australia, they put together an extremely comprehensive report, and they were never able to set foot in North Korea or have any meetings or conversations with representatives of that government. So it's entirely possible to do these things without getting into the country. It's not the end of the world. It's an indication that it's going to be harder than we thought, but at the same time, the UN has experience in dealing with these things. I would also note that there was a commission of inquiry that many people forget about on Burma back in 1997. And that didn't enter the country either. That was the ILO Commission of Inquiry dealing with ILO Convention 29 and the systematic non-fulfillment of treaty obligations as a ratifying state of the ILO Convention 29 Forced Labor Convention. And if you look at the ILO's role now in stopping forced labor inside of Burma and the work that was done, building on that commission report, you will see that these commissions work. That's why I would say that, you know, I would agree with Wai Nu that accountability has got to be front and center in what we're talking about here. There has to be an effort made to identify those who are responsible for instigating hate and leading violence, prosecute them and remove them from the political dynamic. Because these are the same sort of people that we see who are, again, raising the mobs still in places like Sittwe against any sort of progress or reconciliation. So I would just say I would want to thank Jeannie and her team for a fantastic film. I think it really sort of captures the heart of the divisions and the problems that exist there, but also the idea that somehow youth can overcome that if we allow them to get past the hatreds that so many other adults are trying to instill in them. So thank you very much.
Well said, Phil. Thank you. Okay. Wei Wei, are you with us? Is she frozen or is she Wei Nu?
Hi, Wei Wei.
Do you have any
Hi, Wei Wei.
Yes.
quick final, short final remarks? I think she's frozen. Oh.
Yeah, thank you again. As I said, at this point, it is very important to kind of dig into more stories, in particularly situations in northern Rakhine State, situations of the detainees in Butidong and jails in Rakhine State, and all kind of abuses that's ongoing right now. It's not being covered over the media or by not many groups, and when only all the news has been manipulated or dominated by the state consular office, the Facebook page, and which become the only sources for all kind of news on the Rakhine State, and I think which is very, very dangerous, having only one sources. And the last thing is I really appreciate Jenny on your work on this documentary, and it is a really wonderful job, and I hope these children, these kids, can able to go back to the school.
Absolutely.
And it is 5 years, almost 4 to 5 years now.
Yeah.
It is such a shame that we're not able to, you know, work for that, for their educations.
Yeah.
They are still, they're losing the hope. The young people, the children, the kids are not being able to go back to their school, particularly those who have passed their matriculations, high school, are not allowed to go back to the university. And I think this is a very critical area,
Yeah.
and that has to be done since the beginning. And it is you know, the education is very critical for everybody, for education. I mean, for the community as well as for the country, and which make no harm to anyone. So education, you know, we have to talk more on the educations as well.
Yes.
And I really hope they can be able to go back to the school very soon.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Wei
you so
Nu,
much.
for joining us. And thanks everybody for staying for the long discussion. If you enjoyed the film and the talk, we've got Myo Win with us for one more day, and we have a program tomorrow at the Bangkok Art and Cultural Center at Southeast Asia Junction. It's on the 4th floor. It's a free event at 5 p.m. and Myo Win will be speaking there again. We'll be showing the film. It's a very intimate environment, and that's tomorrow at Southeast Asia Junction. They have a Facebook page, and please, it's at 5 p.m. Yeah, I said that. Yep. Believe it or not, 5 to 7 p.m. tomorrow, 4th floor, please tell your friends and come out and support Myo Win and the Smile Education and Development Foundation. Thank you again, Myo Win and Phil Robertson and Wei Wei Nu. Thank you all for sharing your valuable time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also thank to Jenny.
Yes.
Because she make it very adventurous film. I know she went Sittwe several times, you know, with very difficulty. Thank you very much. You have done. Thank you again.